Have you stalled on semaglutide and you're considering switching to tirzepatide? Well, here's my story. So I had went down to 155 and then I gained probably about 15, 20 pounds, was hanging at that weight for about a year, which I thought was pretty good for myself because I would yo-yo. Every 6 months in the past, I would go from about 180 to 220. Every 6 months, I was one extreme or the other. So I was actually pretty happy with myself staying at that 180. But then I decided, you know what? I now have tirzepatide at my clinic. I'm going to try it. Some of my other patients have been wanting to switch, so I thought, why not? So I switched, and it took me about, I'd say almost 8 weeks, because you have to start down at the lowest dose of tirzepatide and slowly go back up, because you can't just go from the high dose of semaglutide to the high dose of tirzepatide, because if you do, you're going to be horribly ill, throwing up, sick, constipated, all that stuff. So you have to go back down to the low dose of tirzepatide and then go back up. So it's taken me some time to get up. I'm about at the 5th dose. There's 7 doses. Yes, I'm sorry, 7 doses of tirzepatide. So I am now at the 4th dose of tirzepatide. I'm just now starting to see my hunger is absolutely plummeting. So I'm kind of thinking what I did when I was on semaglutide is I was actually able to figure out what I could eat that wasn't making me sick. So I was getting more calories and I wasn't following the plan as I should have. Because remember, I was a yo-yoer. So I don't know that I was necessarily stress eating or bored eating, but I love my sweets. So I would crave those sugary sweets in the evening usually. So I would start figuring out what can I eat? Skittles, I could eat those. Those aren't good for me, but those were things that I knew that weren't going to upset my stomach, so I'd start trying to eat those. Now that I'm at that 4th dose of the tirzepatide, absolutely no craving whatsoever for those. It actually nauseates me thinking about possibly eating those. So I figured out that what I was doing is semaglutide was still doing its job, but I figured out how to eat around semaglutide. So it's not that I built up a tolerance to it or that it stopped working for me. I was in my mind, in my body, figuring out a way to go around it. So tirzepatide is actually being a little bit stronger, but it did take me a little bit longer to get to that dose that was more effective. And I have actually had a couple of my other patients tell me that they had to get to that higher dose in order for them to start noticing that the weight's starting to come back off as well. So in the past week, I have started to see the weight coming back off. So if you do switch, you have to be patient. You can't just jump back up to those high doses. You have to be patient because you do have to titrate up like you did in the beginning with semaglutide. So it's going to take you a little bit, several weeks, to get those doses back up. But if you want to switch, you can, but just be mindful that you will have to go back to the way you were in the beginning of semaglutide. You can't eat those things. You will need to start the exercising, and you have to avoid those simple carbs. You have to go back to eating your protein, and you also need to make sure that you're getting your vegetables. So the switch, it might be what you need to do, or you go back to what you did in the beginning when you were on the semaglutide, and semaglutide will do its job. So it comes down to the cost. Can you afford it? Or can you go back to the things that you learned in the beginning with the semaglutide? So just talk to your provider and figure out what's best for you. We're absolutely willing to help you anytime. That's my story. Since you made it to the end of this video, I know you like the content. Subscribe for more.